Ukraine waited for Russian commanders to relax, then collapsed the minefield from within in under 9 seconds.
At 5:30 a.m., at the Nezgol River crossing, the Russian rear sat under an uneasy stillness. That quiet collapsed instantly as Ukrainian attack drones, each priced at less than $50,000, skimmed inches above the river, probing defenses. Behind them, precision rocket fire, valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars per round, streaked in from offset angles, while armored combat vehicles, each costing several $1,000,000, pushed forward along concealed approaches. This was no random clash. It was a deliberate strike on a vital logistics lifeline, aimed at choking fuel and supply traffic bound for Kharkiv. Within moments, the battlefield ignited, setting the stage for a fast-moving demonstration of modern, coordinated warfare. Before we dive deeper into the war, share where you're watching from. It shows how international this conflict truly is. If you watched the previous video on Ukraine striking Russia's port facilities, this opening move at the Nezgol River shows how that pressure is now shifting inland away from the coast and straight onto Russia's supply arteries. The first contact did not come with explosions, but with motion. Ukrainian strike drones drifted in low, riding the river's surface and tree shadows, spreading out to scan for buried charges and suspended anti-drone screens. They moved deliberately, forcing the defenders to track multiple vectors at once. Along the muddy banks, tracked ground scout robots, compact and silent, advanced inch by inch, relaying precise coordinates of firing pits, cable lines, and reinforced positions guarding the bridge approaches. Russian troops reacted quickly. General-purpose machine guns cracked open from camouflaged nests, stitching fire across the waterline, while steel netting was raised to funnel drones into predictable paths. At that moment, a Ukrainian sacrificial decoy drone surged forward, climbing just enough to trigger instinctive fire. Tracers followed it skyward. The decoy was never meant to return. Its job was to pull attention, and it succeeded. As Russian gunners focused on the false target, additional reconnaissance drones slid sideways through the gaps, capturing muzzle flashes, reload pauses, and overlapping dead zones. Behind them, light electronic warfare vehicles, valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars, briefly flooded the area with noise, blurring range estimation and slowing coordination. The ground robots halted, then repositioned, confirming which gun crews had shifted and which had stayed silent. Within minutes, Ukrainian command screens filled with live overlays, firing angles, response delays, and exposed seams in the defense. No bridge section had been struck yet, but the fight had already tilted. The defenders had revealed themselves under pressure, spending ammunition and time. This opening exchange transformed uncertainty into clarity, setting the conditions for the heavier blows that were about to follow. As soon as the decoy drones pulled sustained fire, Ukraine shifted gears with controlled force. HIMARS rocket artillery, each launcher valued at a few $1,000,000, fired 4 precisely timed salvos. The guided rockets, priced at roughly $100,000 per round, cut through the air and struck recently exposed air defense sites and fire control points. The goal was not saturation, but disruption, forcing crews to relocate, pause, and lose tempo under pressure. At nearly the same moment, Su-27 fighters, each aircraft worth tens of millions of dollars, entered launch profiles and released Kh-31P anti-radiation missiles, costing several $100,000 each. As the missiles homed in, Russian electronic warfare operators were forced into rapid shutdown cycles. Radars blinked on and off, breaking continuous coverage and creating gaps that could not be closed fast enough. With the spectrum destabilized, the next strike arrived from above the tree line. One-way attack drones, each valued at tens of thousands of dollars, descended toward a concealed RB-341V Lear 3 electronic warfare vehicle, a system worth a few $1,000,000 hidden along the forest edge. The first drone damaged its antenna array. A second strike followed, knocking out power and silencing the jammer completely. The effect was immediate. Radio interference dropped, radar coordination faltered, and defensive fire lost coherence. Russian units were no longer operating as a network, but as isolated positions reacting independently. The bridge remained intact for the moment, but its protective screen had been stripped away. What followed would no longer be a contest of detection. It would be a matter of timing and execution. The battle was only entering its most dangerous phase. Watch the next video to see how Ukraine turns this opening into a decisive blow at the bridge. If you enjoy the video, comment 1 to support Ukrainian forces, 2 if Russia is weakening, 3 if you hope for peace. Smoke from the shattered jammer truck still hung over the tree line when the next wave rolled in. With Russian air defenses blinded and their electronic shield ripped apart, Ukrainian armor surged forward. From the cover of a low ridge, T-84 main battle tanks gunned their engines and charged across the open ground. Dust plumes rose in their wake as BTR-4 infantry carriers followed close behind, dropping squads of soldiers armed with rifles, grenade launchers, and satchel charges. The thunder of their advance shook the earth, echoing off the Nezhegol River Valley. But Ukraine's assault wasn't just heavy steel. Alongside the armor, motorbike-mounted infantry darted across fields at nearly 45 miles per hour, weaving between craters. Their mission was clear: reach the flanks, lay down anti-tank mines, and choke off any Russian counterattack before it could form. Each rider carried demolition packs strapped to their backs, dismounting only long enough to bury explosives along choke points and dirt tracks. The Russians scrambled to respond. From behind the southern tree line, T-72 tanks rolled out, their barrels leveled at the advancing Ukrainian column. The first shell screamed across the river, slamming into a dirt berm just short of a BTR. The shockwave kicked up mud and debris, but the vehicle pressed on. That's when Ukraine's hidden weapon struck. From above, an FPV suicide drone dove straight into the turret of the lead T-72. The explosion ripped the hatch clean off, flames shooting skyward as the tank's ammunition cooked off. Within seconds, the burning wreck blocked the bridge approach, forcing the other T-72 second to veer off. Seizing the moment, Ukrainian sappers moved in. Crawling beneath the cover of their armor, they deployed compact mine-clearing robots onto the bridge embankments. The small tracked machines inched forward, scanning for wires and pressure plates. Each discovery was relayed back to the operators, who marked detonation points with precision. By now, the battlefield had transformed into a maelstrom of fire and steel. Tanks clashed, infantry dug in, and the bridge loomed just ahead. Ukraine had momentum. But the real objective, the total destruction of the crossing, was still to come. The stage was set for the decisive blow. The wreckage of the T-72 still burned at the bridgehead, its turret blown clean off. When the engineers moved in, behind the smoke, Ukraine's compact ground robots crept along the concrete supports, their sensors scanning every inch. Moments later, operators spotted what they were looking for: thick detonation wires leading to a chain of TM-62 anti-tank mines hidden beneath the span. The discovery forced a bold decision. Instead of hauling in tons of explosives, the Ukrainians would turn the Russians' own trap against them. Commanders gave the order: bring in the Vampire, and from a concealed position upriver, an FPV Vampire drone dropped to low altitude, skimming just 15 feet above the water. Its nose camera locked on to the dark outline of the bridge's underbelly. The pilot eased it forward, the propellers whining as it threaded between steel beams. Russian defenders sprayed bursts of machine gun fire, but their angles were wrong. The drone was too low, hugging the girders like a shadow. As it closed in, the ground robot's feed confirmed the target: a TM-62 pressure plate wired directly into the chain. The Vampire nosed down, its plasticine-shaped warhead pressed flush against the mine's trigger cap. A split second later, the charge ignited. The blast was instant and catastrophic. One mine detonated, then another, then the entire chain. 30 TM-62 second went off in a cascading roar, equivalent to nearly 8 tons of TNT. The shockwave lifted the bridge deck upward like a toy, shattering the 2 central spans. Concrete and rebar disintegrated into a cloud of dust and fire. Water from the Nezhegol River shot skyward in a geyser nearly 120 feet high, raining back down in a thunderous curtain. The entire valley shook as fragments rained across both banks. When the dust cleared, the bridge was gone, its heart ripped out in one decisive strike. The thunder of the bridge collapse still echoed across the valley when the Russians answered back. From concealed positions on the far bank, 122mm howitzers barked to life. Shells whistled overhead and slammed into the Ukrainian approach, gouging craters into the earth and sending dirt and shrapnel spraying across the armored column. But Ukraine had prepared for the counterpunch. Rising above the tree line, a Shrike kamikaze drone nearly the size of a light aircraft banked sharply and dove. Its camera fixed on the muzzle flashes of a pair of D-30 howitzers tucked behind camouflage netting. In seconds, the Shrike plowed into the first gun, the explosion ripping it apart. The second was hit moments later. Its crew scattered as flames engulfed the emplacement. With the Russian artillery silenced, the ground assault pushed forward. Ukrainian infantry squads, dismounted from their BTR-4 carriers, advanced under covering fire. Moving in short bounds, they stormed the remaining machine gun nests along the riverbank. Grenades cleared bunkers. Rifles spat burst through smoke, and within minutes the strongpoints fell. Several Russian soldiers, dazed and wounded, dropped their weapons and were pulled out alive by Ukrainian troops. Meanwhile, intelligence drones spotted the looming threat. A Russian fuel convoy 12 kilometers out, barreling toward the crossing. Tankers and ammunition trucks rumbled forward, unaware the bridge was already gone. Once word reached their command, the order was swift: abort. Engines screeched, and the convoy turned onto secondary roads, retreating into the hinterland. The battlefield was now firmly in Ukrainian hands. The bridge lay in ruins, Russian defenses shattered, and their supply lifelines severed. Yet, the fight was not over. The valley still smoldered, and both sides braced for what would come next. With the machine gun nest silenced and the fuel convoy forced to turn back, Ukrainian forces moved quickly to lock down the battlefield. Engineers dismounted from their carriers and began laying anti-tank mines across the dirt tracks and side roads, ensuring any Russian counterattack would be met with a wall of steel and fire. High overhead, long-range reconnaissance drones circled at 10,000 feet, scanning deep into Russian-held territory. Their thermal cameras tracked the retreating convoy as it veered east onto the Belgorod-Veluki highway. Every move was logged, every turn plotted, and each mile brought the vehicles deeper into the kill zone of Ukrainian HIMARS batteries. At headquarters, analysts reviewed the drone feeds and confirmed the obvious. The Nezhegol Bridge was beyond saving. The central span, torn apart by nearly 8 tons of TNT, lay in shattered slabs. One massive block of reinforced concrete, estimated at *40 tons, was embedded in the riverbed. With Russian field cranes rated for only half that weight, repairs were impossible. The verdict was final. Moscow's supply chain had been severed. To keep fuel and ammunition flowing, Russia now had no choice but to reroute along roads more than 50 miles longer, roads already in range of Ukraine's precision firepower. The verdict was undeniable. The Nezhegol Bridge was gone. Ukraine had not only demolished concrete and steel, but severed Russia's main supply artery into Kharkiv. Strategically, Moscow was forced onto weaker detours, stretching logistics by more than 50 miles and exposing every convoy to HIMARS fire. Yet, amid the smoke, Ukrainian soldiers pulled several wounded Russians from the rubble, proof that victory need not be without humanity. As a towering black plume rose skyward and mirrored across the river, drones banked homeward, carrying a new message. Modern war can be won with speed, ingenuity, and economy. Ukrainian swarms of loitering and kamikaze UAVs pushed forward first, their tiny signatures probing for gaps in the layered air defenses, as Mi-G 29 seconds climbed to high cover and Mi-8 divided by 17 seconds orbited at standoff to ready insertion points. Recon drones punched brief holes in the radar picture, marking fleeting corridors through which follow-on systems could operate. From those openings, mobile Buk-M1 batteries fired volleys intended to suppress the tallest elements of the Russian umbrella, driving pings off the flagship S-350 nodes and forcing fire control to reorient. Meanwhile, a rolling veil of electronic warfare from Bukovel-class trucks smeared enemy sensors, creating ambiguity on Russian scopes and buying precious seconds for maneuver. Under that electronic screen, columns of BMP 2 seconds treated the frozen plain like a chessboard. Short, sharp advances across thin ice and snow, engines muted, crews keyed to the stream of drone feeds. Their movement wasn't a blind rush, but a measured push to seize terrain that would serve as a springboard for assault teams. As air and EW assets tangled overhead, the air defense ring around Chelyabinsk 7-0 staggered, not shattered outright, but strained. Command nets lit up with urgent chatter. Radar tracks danced and vanished. By the time the first assault packages closed on objective corridors, Ukraine had already turned early warning into opportunity, converting reconnaissance and electronic disruption into the kind of localized advantage that decides whether an engagement becomes a rout or a protracted fight. Building on the electronic and drone gains of the first clash, Ukraine moved fast to turn fleeting gaps into a hard landing. As radar holes widened over Snezhinsk's frozen corridors, Mi-8 divided by 17 transport helicopters swept in at treetop height, rotors beating the icy air while disgorging Special Forces squads and gun-armed combat robots directly onto key road junctions. Each touchdown was timed to the second, with reconnaissance drones relaying live wind data and Russian search radar pulses. Behind them, BMP-1 and BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles advanced from staging grounds less than 10 miles back. Using 73mm cannons and smart anti-tank mines, they punched through snowbank obstacles and improvised barricades, cutting fresh lanes across the ice. The movement was not a reckless dash. Armored columns paused and pivoted with every data update from orbiting UAVs, ensuring that each new wedge in the Russian perimeter was deliberate and irreversible. Russia countered with T-72B3 tanks charging from hardened garages, trying to seal the breaches before the foothold could solidify. Yet Ukrainian Buk-M1 launchers and roving kamikaze drones kept low-altitude cover intact, forcing Russian armor to fight under constant threat from above. Gunfire echoed off frozen ridges as helicopter crews shifted to close support mode, pouring precision bursts into emerging strongpoints. By the time the sun edged over the Ural ridgeline, Ukrainian spearheads had secured multiple inland intersections and isolated the first ring of Russian defenses. The air-land fusion helicopter insertions, armored thrusts, and real-time drone targeting gave Ukraine a firm grip on the interior road network and set the stage for an even deeper penetration into the guarded nuclear complex. The armored and helicopter spearheads had barely locked down the key road junctions when the battle shifted to the invisible spectrum. As Ukrainian forces dug in across Snezhinsk's inner approaches, Russia rolled out Krasuka electronic warfare trucks from underground garages, their high-gain antennas sweeping wide arcs to flood the airwaves. Within minutes, Ukrainian drone telemetry flickered, encrypted voice nets broke into static, and entire formations risked losing situational awareness. The Russian aim was clear: blind the attackers and buy time for fresh T-72B3 armor and Su-27 air cover to regroup. Ukraine answered in kind. Mobile EW stations hidden inside repurposed BMP-2 hulls surged forward, switching frequencies on the move and throwing up a thick electromagnetic fog. These roaming emitters cloned false radar tracks, making phantom columns appear miles from their true positions. Mi-8 divided by 17 crews relayed shifting signal maps, guiding both assault squads and counter-jam teams to keep real-time control over each contested block. Above, high-endurance reconnaissance drones adjusted to narrow-beam uplinks, slipping through noise gaps to feed accurate targeting back to field commanders. Under this cover, small Ukrainian strike teams advanced like ghosts. Carrying portable jammers and breaching gear, they infiltrated the Snezhinsk research complex, using the EW haze to cross courtyards and stairwells without detection. Combat robots with mounted machine guns guarded the flanks, their sensors tuned to short-range infrared in case Russian patrols broke through the interference. When they reached the main command wing, the assault unfolded in seconds. Breach charges silenced guard posts, while handheld disruptors cut hard lines, linking the Institute's antenna masts to regional command. Several senior officers responsible for nuclear security were captured alive, ushered out under the same electronic shield that had hidden the approach. By the time Russian defenders realized the intrusion, their control grid was already fractured. Command channels echoed with false alerts and conflicting coordinates. Even Krasuka operators struggled to confirm what was real. The electromagnetic duel had done more than scramble radios, it had tipped the balance of initiative. With the Institute's leadership removed and its communications severed, Ukrainian forces now held not only the ground routes, but also the nerve center of Chelyabinsk 7-0's nuclear research hub, setting the stage for the next tightening of the encirclement. The capture of Snezhin's command hub in the previous assault opened the way for brutal close-quarters fighting inside the core research blocks. With Russian communications crippled and senior officers detained, Ukrainian assault teams pushed deeper into the sprawling laboratory complex, where long corridors and reinforced storage bunkers turned every doorway into a kill zone. Combat robots armed with heavy machine guns led the advance, creeping down dim hallways and firing controlled bursts into blind corners to flush out hidden defenders. Motorcycle-mounted infantry squads followed, darting through breach side entrances to secure stairwells and crosslinks between buildings. Combat engineers moved alongside, using cutting torches and shaped charges to rip through steel blast doors that had been designed to withstand industrial accidents rather than coordinated assault. Overhead, Mi-8 divided by 17 helicopters provided tight arc fire support, losing precision rockets on rooftop strongpoints where a handful of Su-27 pilots and ground gunners still resisted. Each strike was timed to the rhythm of the ground push, collapsing pockets of resistance while keeping pathways for evacuation clear. Inside, the fight played out as a sequence of micro-battles. Ukrainian squads used portable drones for instant mapping, while robot gunners pinned Russian holdouts behind concrete partitions. In lab after lab, defenders were driven back or compelled to surrender, their radio calls scrambled by the persistent electromagnetic fog from mobile EW stations outside. Even as the firefight raged, humanitarian corridors stayed active. Loudspeakers in both Russian and Ukrainian guided scientists and technicians through smoke-filled escape routes to waiting ambulances beyond the perimeter. Medical teams escorted injured personnel, ensuring that non-combatants were spared further danger. By late morning, key laboratories and isotope storage vaults were under Ukrainian control. What had begun as a stealthy electronic strike had become a brutal room-by-room struggle, yet the discipline of the assault kept civilian casualties remarkably low. With the Institute's inner defenses shattered and surviving personnel evacuated or disarmed, Ukraine now held the beating heart of Chelyabinsk 7-0, readying for the final phase of containment and securing of sensitive nuclear materials. With the inner laboratories secured and scientists evacuated, Ukrainian commanders turned to the wider ring of support that kept the Chelyabinsk 7-0 research city alive. The mission now was to strangle reinforcements and choke off every watt of power that could sustain a counterattack. Orders rippled through encrypted networks, and within minutes, self-propelled 2 S-3 howitzers opened fire from hidden icebound positions 12 miles out, hurling salvos that arced high and slammed into rail junctions linking Chelyabinsk with Ekaterinburg. Each impact severed key freight lines, sending rails twisting skyward and blocking troop trains before they could even approach. Overhead, long-endurance strike drones followed up, using satellite feeds to hit switching yards and signal houses in quick succession. Their precision attacks carved deep craters in the main east-west arteries, ensuring that Russian heavy armor would face days, not hours, of detour. At the same time, BMP-2 units fanned out to dominate bridges and overpasses within a 15-mile radius, setting up overlapping fields of fire. Any T-72B3 tank attempting to force a crossing would meet anti-armor rockets from multiple angles before it could bring its gun to bear. Further inside the cordon, specialized UAVs with extended range homed in on the facility's lifeblood, power, and fuel. Coordinated drone strikes ignited bulk fuel farms and disabled auxiliary substations that fed the Institute's sensitive instruments and ventilation systems. Transformers erupted in blue-white flashes, and whole districts fell into blackout. From the frozen night sky down to the snowy railbeds, the once steady pulse of electricity and logistics that sustained the nuclear complex simply went dark. Russian attempts to break the siege only highlighted its effectiveness. Emergency convoys of diesel trucks bogged down on mined secondary roads, while helicopter sorties were forced to abort under constant missile lock from concealed Buk M1 launchers. Even mobile electronic warfare teams could do little to mask the massive gaps appearing on their own supply charts. By late afternoon, the battlefield map told a single story. Every major line of approach was either cratered, mined, or under direct fire. The Chelyabinsk 7-0 enclave, already hollowed out by earlier assaults, now stood fully isolated. What began as a sharp urban clash inside laboratory halls had widened into a meticulously engineered encirclement, ensuring that no reinforcement, fuel load, or surge of power could breathe life back into Russia's secret nuclear heartland. By evening, the isolation of Chelyabinsk 7-0 was absolute, and the siege lines tightened into the final act. The last Russian holdouts, small squads entrenched in utility tunnels and reinforced vaults, found themselves cut off from power, ammunition, and outside orders. Ukrainian loudspeakers rolled through the icy streets, broadcasting calm surrender appeals in both Russian and Ukrainian. Each message was paired with real-time drone footage of safe corridors, leaving no doubt that laying down arms was the surest path to survival. Combat medics advanced behind armored screens, accompanied by agile rescue robots designed to carry stretchers across debris-choked passages. Under their protection, mixed medical teams evacuated wounded Russian soldiers and any remaining civilian staff to triage points beyond the blast perimeter. Firefights still flared at isolated choke points, but each was met with precise suppression and quick medical extraction, preventing panic from spreading. Ukrainian infantry maintained disciplined security on every route, ensuring that non-combatants and surrendering troops could pass unharmed. By the time night settled over the Ural plain, organized resistance had ceased. What remained was the careful work of evacuation and stabilization, a final deliberate proof that even in the most high-stakes combat, humanitarian conduct could define the victory as much as the battlefield gains. By dawn, Chelyabinsk 7-0 lay silent, its nuclear research vaults sealed and command systems paralyzed. The final evacuations from the night's surrender corridors confirmed that the last Russian defenders had either yielded or been safely extracted. Strategically, Ukraine's objective was complete. The heart of Russia's advanced warhead research network was neutralized. The impact reaches beyond physical damage, forcing Moscow to scatter its nuclear R&D at high cost and weakening its long-term deterrent posture. Yet a larger question now hovers. Will Russia answer through space assets or by building new covert labs deeper inland? This campaign proves that a tightly synchronized mix of drones, mechanized infantry, helicopters, artillery, robots, and electronic warfare can dismantle even the most fortified scientific stronghold while upholding humanitarian discipline. As sunrise bled across the frozen Ural plain, smoke columns climbed thousands of feet, a stark emblem of precision victory and measured restraint. Before we go deeper into the battlefield, share where you're watching from. Every region feels this conflict in its own way. From high above the tree line, a Russian Orlan 1-0 priced at $100,000 sliced through the morning air, its thermal sensors catching a faint disturbance where nothing should have been. Within seconds, it relayed the anomaly to the nearby EW unit, Lear 3. A system worth $5 million, triggering a rapid sweep across every RF band they could reach. That was the moment the first clash ignited. Ukraine launched a buzzer jet decoy barely $900, forcing the Orlan 1-0 to dip hard, exposing the exact location of Russia's EW truck. On the ground, a PKM team, its weapon valued at $3,000, opened fire blindly into the sky, only to lose the target as a curtain of metallic chaff drifted down from a Mavic R drifting just out of reach. The Russians believed they had detected a threat. In reality, they had only touched the edge of a much larger trap. The game had only begun. As Russian operators struggled to pinpoint the drifting signals, Ukraine triggered its hidden network of partisan spotters. locals armed only with encrypted phones, quietly sending geotagged images of the fuel train as it moved through occupied territory. Overhead, two shadow-eye drones, each worth $6,500, glided low along the rail line, mapping the convoy car by car through subtle thermal differences. What looked like an ordinary morning train to anyone on the ground now appeared as a glowing chain of targets on the Ukrainian screens. Then came the second clash. A Russian Tiger M armored truck rumbled into position, its roof-mounted Cord 12.7mm heavy machine gun priced at $14,000 firing long bursts into the sky to break the drone's tracking run. The response was immediate. A Ukrainian Ram 2X mini drone valued at $52,000 hugged the ground and streaked forward, forcing the Russian crew to abandon their firing angle and dive into a roadside trench for cover. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent except for the hum of engines and the distant clatter of steel wheels. On the Ukrainian monitors, the picture grew sharper. The locomotive, the spacing of the fuel cars, the blind spot in Russian radar coverage. Each minute added another piece to a puzzle Russia never realized was being assembled. The trap was tightening. If drones help Ukraine shift the fight, drop 1. If Russia's defenses stand firm, drop 2. If peace should come first, drop 3. Ukraine finally cracked the pattern. After hours of thermal tracking, signal triangulation, and partisan feeds, the full rhythm of the fuel train emerged. A steady speed, a predictable cadence, and most importantly, a 19-minute blind spot in Russian air defense coverage. Even better, the route crossed a shallow valley where Russia's radar net sagged, leaving the locomotive exposed like a glowing artery on the map. For the first time, the entire strike picture snapped into place. From a tree-lined ridge, Russia launched a Strela 1-0 interceptor, each missile worth $40,000, its smoke trail twisting upward in the morning air. But the Ukrainian drone operator had anticipated it. A burst of laser scatter shimmered across the sky, confusing the missile seeker and sending the first shot drifting harmlessly into empty space. Frustrated, a nearby Russian infantry unit opened fire with AK-74 rifles, each $1,200, their muzzle flashes kicking dust as rounds tore upward. The barrage forced the drone to shift its approach vector, weaving through the tracers like a needle through cloth. Despite the chaos, the thermal feed remained crystal clear. The locomotive burned bright white, the fuel cars pulsed with uneven heat, and the blind corridor ahead beckoned like an open door. Even under fire, the Ukrainians could see everything they needed. The moment of truth was closing in. Ukraine assembled its strike package with cold precision. 4 attack drones fitted with PG-7 load warheads, each worth $1,100, were positioned in a staggered formation, guided by a single SkyMos fiber optic drone priced at $3,800. A 9-micron glass thread tethered the lead drone to its operator,